the ideas that you're going to be playing with in order um, to draw a bird nest, you can apply those to all sorts of interesting things. Anytime there's complex overlapping textures, that could be in a grassland. You can apply these same ideas just to drawing, foliage in a tree. These same ideas are going to apply. But there's also some neat kind of structural sculpting thoughts that we can get into with bird nests. So we're going to look at bird nests initially two very different ways. One, just what is the shape and the structure of a bird nest and how you would record that, completely ignoring the texture. And then how do you handle texture on a bird nest? And we'll play with that. And we'll put those two things together. So if you get the shape and the structure and the texture, it's going to look like a bird nest. And more importantly than it looking like a bird nest, having some of these tricks and techniques is going to allow you to kind of easily transfer what you see to the page. So you're less wrapped around the axle about like, how do you, like, right? And it allows you to communicate visually those complex textures a little bit more easily. Remember though, that it's not about making pretty pictures. The most important reason that we put in our journals, our drawings, is that it helps us pay attention to the details of the world around us. Oh, and I remember actually just earlier today, I was having a really interesting conversation with Melinda. And I was wondering, Melinda, maybe just to kind of get us started, because this, I've got to warn you folks, when we kind of get into there, like we're going to be like really getting into the weeds on some detail on these bird nests, and it can be I don't want that to feel overwhelming. So what I'd like to do is bring Melinda on. I'm going to add. Hi, Melinda.
Hi everyone.
It'd be fun if we could just kind of jump into the Wayback Machine and kind of go back to a little bit earlier today when you and I were having an offline chat. And you shared some thoughts that I thought were really profound and would be really useful for all of us nature journalers in framing what we're doing, and before we kind of launch into this lesson.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly the words that I said, but I recall the impression was what I always tell folks in my class and in the sessions is about nature journaling is about the observation and recording our experience. And so when we do, especially today with Jack, talking about the details of the nest, we're going to get into the weeds, literally the weeds, is to have the focus that this is not about drawing. If it's your nature journal page, it's not about drawing the nest and all the details. It's about capturing, I call it maybe just the essence or the general feeling of it, because nature journaling is about diving into our observations, our curiosity, asking questions, and being creative in making connections with unrelated items to the nest. And that the whole big picture is what nature journaling is. And today, Jack is doing what he does so well, is teaching us drawing techniques to improve our drawing skill. But this is couched in a bigger picture, right? We're all here part of the Nature Journal Club. Nature journaling is not about what we're going to be drawing today. It is part of the big picture. So I want you to take home that being able to draw this nest in great detail or not being able to do it does not make you an unsuccessful nature journaler. This is just adding, it's like another tool to add to your tool belt of nature journaling. So what I always advocate is scribble, be messy on your page. Don't worry about the perfectness. Just like Jack is teaching about zooming in. So the textures, he's going to teach us the techniques that make us more proficient at rendering those textures onto the page. But know that for you to be a nature journaler, you don't have to have a command of this today, that it will come with time if you choose, right? So to be a nature journaler does not mean that you have to know how to draw texture really well. We have words for that. And that's why Jack and I and the other teachers are always talking about the words, pictures, and numbers. Some things are best conveyed with pictures and some with words and some with numbers. And it's going to be different for each of you. So just know that in the back of your mind, when you're learning these techniques today, you can apply them to other aspects of your nature journal. And I encourage you to use that technique of zooming in. So drawing, I think Jack will show us like how to just block in the structure of the nest. And maybe Jack will show us too, like a little square of the texture. And we're just gonna color in a little square of the texture and not the whole nest, right? For our nature journal page. But if you wanted to do a study of how the grasses are woven in between each other in a weaver bird's nest, and you want to get really crazy into the details for a different page, then go for it. You know, follow your curiosity. But I'm giving you permission as a nature journaler that you don't have to have that skill or ability today. That it's really about using your eyes and your mind and your heart to observe nature. Hopefully that was helpful.
I think that is really helpful. All right. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Don't worry about, so we're going to get some techniques. Then don't feel like, oh no, I've got these techniques. Now I have to make this, you know, a hair by hair bird nest and get overwhelmed by that. We're going to be looking at how to sort of break off a little piece when you want to kind of drop some detail in there. And if you want to apply these ideas over the entire nest, you'll absolutely be able to do that. But I think it's really freeing to know that you also have the permission to make a quick scribble and add some written notes, and you've recorded information about a bird nest, and that is useful. And all these tricks and techniques, the more you do it, the more you practice, the better and better you're going to get at it. So these are skills that we develop over time, and I think you're going to have some fun. So Melinda has our tech experience here. She's talked me through how now we can actually do the split screen. So what I'm going to do is we're going to be able to go to, here we are. Boom, look at this. We have a piece of paper right here, and we have, I'm going to zoom in on that.
And Jack, can I just make a quick helpful tip for those of you who have not done, who've seen this? If you're on a computer screen, you can put your mouse over the line that's in between the two, the left screen and the screen of Jack, and a gray line should pop up, and you can grab that line with your mouse and slide it over to the right, and you can maximize this desktop that Jack is sharing.
All right. I'm seeing a little bit of a lag here on the visualizer screen, but I don't think that that's going to really cause big problems for us. Melinda, let me know, or Ivea, let me know if this starts to be a problem.
Okay.
All right. So let's start just by looking at some bird nests here. Let's see, can make this even bigger. So bird nests, if you've ever tried to weave your own bird nest, you know that this is absolutely astounding. I cannot make a bird nest like this with my incredible opposable thumbs and a set of tweezers. How they do this is beautiful, and each bird makes a slightly different kind of nest. You can actually identify birds by their nests. So there isn't just a generic bird nest. When you find a nest, it actually can be tied to a specific species. Something that you'll notice is that the materials that the nest is made out of, there are different sorts of materials that are often used in different parts of the nest. And so you want to have these on your radar. So here there is a coarse outer core, and then there is an inner layer or lining of the nest that is fine fibers. So you've got fine fibers and coarse on the outside. You also want to pay attention to how these are woven together. On some, you'll find lots of overlapping fibers going up and down. Others on this one, I'm seeing mostly things just going around and wrapping around and wrapping around. So you want to pay a little bit of attention to what is the direction that pieces are moving. Does it seem to be just sort of random overlaps every which way? This one is clearly, it's a horizontal strips. Big ones on the outside, small ones on the inside. This one, you look at it, and it's an every which way. On the inside of this nest, this little marsh wren nest, there is an internal cavity, and it's filled with cattail down and all sorts of nice cozy things. And on the outside, there are these big pieces that are wrapped around it. But notice that there isn't a predominant direction here. We got some things going this way, some things going this way. They're all overlapping each other, and really big, coarse things again on the outside. Our overall shape here is a sphere with a little hole towards the bottom. So it's not a cup, but we've got a sphere. If I were to draw this, I would want to get a sense of that sphere, and I would also then want to get a sense of the visible textures. These are weaver finch nests, and there are an incredible variety of weaver finch nests. The shapes of the different ones, a number of weaver finches, you can identify them by the shape of their nest. This one has a double bag and then a little nozzle sticking down that the weavers can crawl up into. Take a close look at how this one is. What are the textures of it? So there's fine texture out here, coarse texture on the bowl of it, and back and forth kind of just random crossovers in this back part and on the tube. Watching these things being built is really fun. In Rwanda, I spent a few days underneath some acacia trees watching weavers build these things. And they often build some initial internal structures and then finish around that. They're just amazing, amazing little structures. As you're looking at this, think about the texture on the outside, but one way of really showing the texture is also just look along the edges of this nest. Look at how big, how the thickness, so here even thickness of materials. These are really selecting one diameter of things. And notice sort of the frequency and length of the little bits and pieces that stick off. That is going to help you turn this drawing into something that looks very specific to this kind of a nest. Structure-wise, you've got a ball and a tube hanging down. The sunlight is coming from the left-hand side, and look at how it's making a shadow around this, the right-hand side of the ball and along the right-hand side of that entrance tube. A little bit more on this, but here you see the structure and then some texture. Drawing the texture of fine overlapping things can be confusing, especially if those fine overlapping things are lightly colored. So if I start drawing in each of these fibers with my pencil, the problem is that I've got all these white to pale tan fibers. My pencil makes a dark mark. And so what am I going to do about that? How do I handle that? Because as I'm drawing, I'm making the thing darker, and the thing that I'm seeing as a light colored fiber, my pencil, is making a dark mark. Now, if I was doing this on a piece of dark colored paper and I had a light colored pencil, I could just start drawing these things in. But for most of us, that's not what we're carrying. And for those of us who are carrying tone paper, it's really usually not that dark of value. But we're going to get some strategies and some tricks up our sleeves to help us tackle exactly this problem. A little bit more on the structure of the nests. So notice that this is a vireo nest. Vireos will find a fork in a tree, and then they will hang their material from the nest will hang down from that little fork in the tree. They'll put a little bit of soft lining inside of it, but the cup nest will be hanging right down from that point. Let's take a look at the materials used in here. Look at how thick they are. So here we're not looking at little grasses. There's a lot of heterogeneity, a lot of variation in the sizes of the fibers that are used here. And you'll see towards the center, things kind of clearly going down. But then there are also some sideways wraparound ones. Here, this little warbler nest is perched in a triple crotch of a tree. And instead of hanging down from a Y, it is sitting up in that. So when we can see how a nest is attached to the supporting materials around it, the tree or the bush that it's in, those are really useful bits of information for us also to include. So this, oops, not you, this really different attachment arrangement than this. Also notice, again, the difference in the neatness of it. Is it tidy, like this one, nice clean edges, but materials crossing over it that are all of different sizes. This one, there is a homogeneous matrix of material, so fibers that are all one size, but the whole thing looks messy and also very different arrangement. So you're seeing here that as we look at nests, we want to initially be really intentional about spotting these kinds of differences. And then what we'll do is when we see these things, we're going to say them out loud, and that's what we're going to be recording in our journal. And so you could make a quick sketch of this, have a line pointing to it saying thin fibers, all of one width, and be the ones on the top are white and they're more brown below. So you can see the advantage here of using words in with your diagrams and drawings. But we'll today be really focusing on how to make those drawings work. Here, this little wren's nest, you've got coarse fibers. Notice that there's kind of a clear upper ring, so things are going in one direction up there. You'd want to show that there's a change in direction down below that. This gnat catcher, like hummingbirds, uses spider web and little bits of lichen to construct a nest. The cool thing about a nest like this is it's form-fitting. It's like spandex. So as you kind of tuck into it, if you put on your spandex suit before Thanksgiving, as you are eating more and more and more, your spandex grows with you. That's exactly what happens here in this little bird nest. So the little babies, the eggs are all kind of tucked on the inside. That's mama sitting on top. And as they hatch and as the nest grows, the spider web stretches and you've always got a snug little nest around you. So, but again, here we're looking at it structurally. We're interested in, it's a cup nest perched on top of a horizontal branch, not at a crotch, but just on top of a branch. It's wrapping down around the side of that in one place, right? But a little ball of a nest. And finally, when you really get into nests, there are stories hidden in nests. Well, here, stories both literally and figuratively. This is a double-decker nest. These are double-decker nests of cerulean warblers. And what's going on here is combat with cowbirds. Cowbirds are nest parasites, and they will drop their eggs off in other birds' nests. If they can find them, they will drop their eggs off in other birds' nests, and then you end up with those other birds raising your chicks. Pretty great deal. So this cerulean warbler has figured that out. And what it's done is you can see it has made a second nest on top of the eggs of the cowbird parasite. Isn't that crazy? So you find something like this, you're also going to want to, there's so much of this interesting story here. You're going to want to show this and capture this in your drawing. So bird nests, wonderful structure. I'm going to show you tricks so you're not going to be overwhelmed by, how do I handle this complexity? We're going to show the structure, we're going to show the texture, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Oops, I have just lost my, I've crashed my keynote. Hold on. Ah, there it is. I'm glad it came back. Right, so, oops, that's not what I want. I'm still figuring out this. Go view. No, play slideshow in window. That's what I want. Aha. All right, now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to just, I'm going to put this up on the side, and I am going to move it over here, and we will move. There we are. All right, let's talk next structure for just a little bit here. The kind of nest that we're most familiar with is the cup nest. Sort of, it's a big bowl of a nest. And when you're looking at a bowl, you're going to have the close side of the opening. You're going to have the far side. You might be able to see a little bit, depending on the angle, down into the nest. All right. On the side, this is one of the more, it's sort of a least exciting view, but maybe a little bit easier to draw. But just notice that as you go from the side view, as it starts to tilt towards you, when you start to see the opening, instead of a circle, I'm seeing an oval here. So there's an oval entrance. I see a little bit of the back side, and I see all front side. The more it tilts towards you, the more that oval on the top becomes a circle. For a very informative view, something like this is great, because what you'll be doing is you'll be able to see the overall cup shape of the nest. You'll see all of the front surface. You'll see what the inside texture is like. You may also be able to then see the eggs that are sitting down there in the bottom of it. So a view like this can be very, very informative for drawing our nest. So let's think here just a little bit about drawing a cup-shaped nest from a 3/4 view. I am going to start with an oval. And I'm going to put another oval inside of that. here what I'm trying to do is show the width of these. Actually, if I want to do this a little bit more accurately, I would make it here. I'm trying to make my little oval a little bit skinnier on the side that's away from me and close to me here. You can see it a little bit wider here, just because of foreshortening. Here you're going to see the full width of the nest. Some nests are very thick. The cup structure will be very thick. Others, it'll be smaller, but pay attention to sort of, what is your kind of initial nest going to be? Sort of a smaller hole, wider nest, or is it a bigger hole, sort of small, thinner nest structure? Now your cup comes down from that. So if I am wanting to show the volume in a nest like this, the form, shadows are very helpful. There's a convention in scientific illustration that is that sort of the light kind of comes down from the top left-hand corner. And so I'm going to have my light coming in here. And what that's going to do is it's going to put part of this back wall in shadow. So I'm going to jump over to just a little marker here and put part of this back wall in shadow. And at the edge of that, I'm just going to kind of put in a few dots and sort of fray it out a little bit. Also in shadow is going to be this edge that is close to you here. I'm going to wrapping my lines kind of around this round form, not going all the way to the very edge there. So I'm leaving a little bit of light there. I am putting in just kind of a hint of shadow there. So it's interesting, sort of where the light is and where the dark is, they're reversed in this. So here, the darkness on this side here is, the darkness is on the side that is closest to the light. Here, on the outside surface, the darkness is on the side that is furthest away from the light. Different nests have different shapes. Some are spheres. We saw that in that wren nest. Let's kind of go there on the side. Oop. So for that wren nest, it's got a little hole down here. And again, I'm going to put the light in coming from this direction here. So on this, in here, on this inner part, that's where I'm going to be looking into the darkness. And the shadow is going to be more on this surface here. Of course, nests can be all sorts of shapes. Weaver Finch nest. Let's jump over to that Weaver Finch nest. Come back over here. Lovely Weaver Finch nest. There is sort of a bag over here. And on the other side, there is a tube coming down. So if I were having the same light direction coming in here, that means that this surface over here on this part of the sphere would be in shadow. This business would be in shadow. This stuff up here would be casting a shadow across this, and this side of this tube would be in shadow. So putting that in here on this sort of rounded surface here, those surfaces would be in shadow. You know, if you're not putting in shadows, another thing you can do, we've looked at this before, drawing murmurations and blobbies. If you could just treat this as a blobby. We've done these in some of our other workshops, where you can just put little contour lines across them and sort of say, you know, here are the contours of this object. Both of those describe the shape. This is a little bit more diagrammatic. But if our goal is, you know, to explain the sort of show the shape and the structure of something, that works great. This one is sort of using more kind of tricks of visual art. So I'm going to have on the background of this, there's going to be a shadow, and that shadow is going to really help the form. Now what I want to do is to start to think about, how do I show texture in these same drawings? Let's just do a few texture swatches. Melinda mentioned doing this. One kind of great way to do this is just sort of imagine a little, you know, if there's a different texture here, I can put in a little window here. I'm going to put in another little window over here. And I'm going to draw out here an arrow and draw that texture in that box. I can draw another little arrow out here, and I can show you the texture, kind of life size, what that's in there. And then I'm not going to, this is a smaller area. If I feel overwhelmed doing this whole thing, I can, just doing texture in a small area is much more manageable. We will also be that kind of to do that over the whole thing, but just realize you don't have to. Another thing that you can do is you can use words in here. You can just describe, you know, this part is horsehair down in here, and thin hair-like fibers. And then I can have a little line over here, and I'm going to write coarse fibers that are 2 to 5 millimeters in diameter. So you can use words also to really flesh this out. That takes a lot of pressure off. But let's look at how you draw some of these complex overlapping patterns. Let's just start with a little texture box here. One thing I can do is just sort of get in there and start. Let's say these are kind of randomly done. I am going to put in some fibers of different directions. I then have all of these kind of overlappy places that look kind of messy to me, where I'm getting these kind of tic-tac-toe-like grids. Sort of looks like bad plaid. I can clean that up a little bit by coming in here on some of them. I am going to kind of decide which ones are on top and get in there. And we'll do it in here too. And then redraw in. Let me zoom down here. I'm then redrawing in which ones were on top. So I initially just I wasn't worrying about those things flapping. I just put in my lines, and then I've got a fine tipped eraser here. This is kind of cool thing. It's mono zero, combo mono zero. I do sell these over in my store. But there's a few different brands of this one. And what's great is you can get in there for just a little tiny spot and sort of say like, yeah, I'm going to take out that line right there. Another thing I want to do here is that the lines that are the closest to me, I'm going to punch those a little bit. So this one on top gets to be a little bit stronger. Right there where they cross over. So I'm just going to reinforce some of those lines that are on top. And remember, these are light fibers against a darker background. So the way I can handle that is just by coming in here and adding a little bit of darkness into those spaces behind. And as I do that, if I add a little bit of variation in there, like look at this, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do this part a little bit darker, punch that in darker, then lighter, then darker again. Ooh, I kind of created another kind of bonus fiber in there. Having a little bit of places where in some of these corners here, I'm going to just punch in the darkness a little bit more, add a little divot of darkness right in there. That just sort of helps give the sense that there's more volume to this. I also can use pencil strokes filling in these areas of different directions. Suggests it might be some difference of where direction that the fibers are going in there. But essentially, I'm working around those shapes that I've already created. And I can do this over the entire surface of a nest if I want to. Or if that feels like, oh, I want to go look at something else, then I can just do that for a little portion here, just this little snippet. And I'm good to go. Crisp up a few of those edges. I'm hearing the voice of my science illustration teacher, Ann Cottle, in my head right now, saying, add just a little divot of darkness in there, right there, just a little divot of darkness. She'd say, I want you now just to go back in there and just crisp up some of those edges. So those are all things that she said to me. Those words still stick in my head, and they're good strategies. It just sort of starts to feel like, yeah, you've got layers of plant fibers there. Let me show you another technique that you can use as well. for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just I'm going to fill this space with light hatch. I'm not pressing very hard. I'm kind of getting some pencil strokes in different directions. So I'm making this sort of a patchwork of pencil lines. All right, there's a little patchwork of pencil lines. This is a blender. It's a little pencil blender. It's wrapped up paper. And what I can do with it is I can come in and smooth together these lines. And what it does is makes a very nice kind of even gray. I intentionally put those marks in going different directions because see how a little hint of that shows through? I'm actually going to want a little hint of that to show through. If I keep blending this, I can get this to be just a perfectly smooth, even surface. But I actually don't mind just a little bit of that little micro texture in there. When I blended, come back to the mono zero eraser here. And look at this. I'm now going to draw in those fibers. As I do this, let's also keep an eye on the negative shapes that I'm creating. Not just the shapes of my little lines. I want some of them thicker. In this one, I want some of them thicker. I want some of them thinner. These ones, I've got them intentionally kind of going in all these different directions. But also I'm trying to, in this one that's going to feel more random, I don't want all of my black spaces to be the same shape or the same size. So I'm going to intentionally keep this one bigger, right? Have some of them be smaller. I'd like to have some shapes of different sizes in there. Once I've done that, I can now come back with the pencil and start drawing on top of these and say like this is going to be a little plant fiber. It's going to come up here and twist. And I'm drawing on top of where I so start with whatever ones you want to be on top. And they're now showing up against this light background.
And Jack, while you're doing this, I just wanted to ask, these are not techniques that we all need to master. We can just select what feels interesting to us and use. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can just pick, any of these that sort of feel like fun to you, like, oh, I like that one. So that's right. I can
but I'm just sort of showing you different ways of handling these. And then just as I did in here, I'm going to get back into some of those dark areas and put some darks in next to some of those lights. And push some of those darks to even darker dark places. Having some of those darker points in there really helps give the nest some depth. And so, for instance, I see this little kind of dark mark coming along here. I can actually visualize that coming through here and up this way. So I can keep developing that. But you see how I brought that, developed that out with a little bit of a lighter with that sort of blending tool, and I can also bring back other lights into it if I choose to. And you get a sense of kind of complex overlapping stuff. There's a few other techniques that you can use as well. Let's play with a little bit of watercolor. All right, here is a little watercolor swatch.
Could you slide your paper down just a tad?
Oh, yes. So I have, it is. It was over you, but there's one more tool and it's over on the other side of the room. So hold on a second. There it is. If I am doing things with watercolor, one thing that I can do is to draw in with a white colored pencil. I can draw in some of the fibers that I would like to show. I'm using a white Prismacolor pencil. It's a kind of sort of a waxy pencil, and this pencil creates a resist. So a resist means that water doesn't like to kind of go on top of the wax. And so I'm now going to draw, paint in. There's a little bit of glare on this. And you can see as this is starting to dry that those white marks, I'll put my hand, where do I kind of block that reflection? I'll stop that reflection. So you can see that as this is starting to dry, that where I put the pencil on, you're seeing those plant fibers, right? But they're not really that white. If I take a clean brush, because there's sort of a waxy surface here, I can, with a clean brush, come along and wipe off more of the paint that is sitting on top of that wax. And I don't have to do it for all of them, because this gives me, it's sort of like lifting out. You know, you can, with some kinds of paint, you can really lift out things very easily. But with this, because stuff is on top of this white surface, as I go in here with the clean tip of my brush, it really brings those fibers back out to me. And I'm going to leave some of them as sort of more subdued back there. I'm going to do one of these two over here. Let's make it this one. Isn't that cool? Really easy to do. So, and then I'm going to add to that, and I'm going to now let this dry, and I'll come back and mess with this a little bit more. While that is drying, let me show you another strategy. This is a masking fluid marker. And I tried a different kind some time ago, and I didn't like it because it just made a mess. But this is kind of interesting. I shake it up, and it's going to draw these blue lines. And wherever I get a blue line, I am putting down masking fluid. So if I do a quick mark, I can get sort of, you know, thinner things, and a slower line can make a broader mark. And then I let that dry. And it doesn't take very long for it to dry. Put in just a few other lines here. There we go. So this this brand, what is this? The Molotow. Yes, Molotow. I think these folks make a legitimate, useful pen. So that dries. And what this is you're thinking like, I don't want these little blue lines on things. Don't worry about that. But check this out. Just like with the with the white pencil, test is this. Yeah, this is now dry. I'm going to come along here and paint over this. And I've discovered that a really big part of this next step is I really, really, really want to let this dry. All right, we'll come back to that and do something cool with it in just a moment. While I'm waiting, I'm just looking back here, really thinking I want more value in here. I want to punch some of these darks a little bit darker. So I'm just going to give in there and give some of those divots of darkness just a little bit more of a punch. Makes those light things stand out. You're fine. You're not dry yet. But this is dry enough for me to continue working on. So I am going to come along and I am going to, in between some of these spaces, just punch in extra darks and darkness. And I can put those in the background. Rather than do it as a big kind of solid thing, I'm letting some of that lighter paper color show through. And then in some places, I'm really going to push it darker. Those places where you really push in the value, here I've got some Bloodstone Genuine. So it allows me to kind of go very dark value. That's going to really help that piece. This is now high enough for me to get to add in all that stuff is still there. Some more darks. And I'm going to get some very, very dark and put that in a few places. This one here is looking pretty chaotic because it has the blue marks right on top of it. But we'll do something very fun with those in a moment. While that's happening, I'm going to come back in here just with a pencil, and I can draw on top of this. A few other tools in my arsenal for adding these light lines on where I want light lines on a dark surface. This is a lovely one. This is a gel pen. This is the Signo Uniball Gel Pen. And it does a very good job of making light lines on a darker surface. A wider, broader version of that. This is a, what was this? This is this correction pen. this is a pen that makes sort of big, very white, but thick lines. Kind of sometimes have to squeeze the middle of it. It's called Biggie Jump Correction Pen. Between these two, if you just had to have one of them, I definitely prefer this Signo. The Signo Uniball Gel Pen. A very nice thing about that is it's also water soluble. So if I don't like one of those lines that I put down, I can get in there and go like, all right, that little line there, I don't think I really want it there. Take it away. But I can't do that with the Biggie Jumbo Correction Pen. See, this is almost ready, almost ready. I'm going to give it a little bit more time. While we're doing that, I want to just check in with Melinda and Ivea and find out what is this?
Yeah.
Are there any questions that people dropped into the chat about what we're doing here?
There is perfect timing. There is a question about if you could repeat the process of just telling us again the process from when you did the white pencil. You've layered a bunch of different.
Sure. So step one is I first came in and I put in some pencil lines, some white pencil lines. Step two on that is I got my watercolor and put it over the top of that. And you can see that those marks now sort of show through. I'm then going to pick some of them and with a clean brush, just tip with the tip. And I pick up the paint that is on that part of that surface. Another thing I can do, I can get in there and I can put in more darker darks and then still be able to remove those darks on top where they are on top of the wax. Is that the process that they're wondering about?
Yes, I think they just wanted to you to review that. They were asking specifically, how do you go over with a wet, clean brush?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what you just showed.
I have, what I'm doing is I'm wiping it. Here, I get it wet, and then I just, on a rag, I go wipe, and then I come back, my brush tip is clean. And I hit it again. Wipe on here to get any of that paint off. Come in there. So I'm in between these strokes. I'm just kind of coming over here to my piece of paper, my piece of cloth, and I wipe it on that, and I'm able to pick those out and up. Right. Now I think that this is. I wish I could let it dry a little bit. If I were on my own here, I think I'd let this dry a little bit more. Now, if I start to rub on it with my finger, I can start to get some of this rubber cement, this blue stuff to come up. However,
Jack, can you take your mouse and just tap on the visualizer screen? It'll get rid of the frame.
The what?
If you just move your mouse onto the visualizer screen, the IP vote, it'll get rid of the border. It should.
Mouse. Oh, move. Mouse.
Oh, that's okay. You've moved the paper, so it's good. We can see.
Okay. Sometimes when you're trying to remove masking fluid, it doesn't want to come up. So something that they make to help with that is a masking fluid remover. And it's a sort of a piece of rubber, of hard rubber. And if I rub on this with it, the masking fluid comes up very easily on, and it sticks to this little piece of rubber. The rubber likes to go play with the rubber. And this allows me to very nicely and cleanly come in here and remove my masking fluid. And you'll see it takes it right back down to pure white paper. I was resisting using one of these because I thought I should be able just to do this with my fingertip. But my fingertip just does not work as well at all for removing masking fluid. So you get these bright white lines. And if I leave it like this, it looks like there are these bright white lines across it. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to paint. I can paint, some of these, put more value into them. Figure out which ones I want to be on top, which ones I want to be on bottom of this whole business. Leave some of them white. Right. And I can also get in there with my pencil and draw. I want to wait till this page is dry. But if I draw along the edges of those, I can then pick that out as a little fiber that's on top of all those other ones. And here is another. And back here, the thing that's really nice about this approach is that because I've now am back just to pure paper, I can get in there and tint or color those as I see fit. I have a harder time doing that on this one up here. I can do it a little bit, but the watercolor is still, it's on top of the watercolor is now going on top of that pencil, and it doesn't like to be on top of that pencil. But here, this is just down back to just straight up paper. And
Jack, you've done this before. You've added some tint the color on the white gel pen marks, so we can add a little bit of color there, right?
Oh, thank you for reminding me about that. Let's do some of that now. Yeah, on those gel pen lines, it doesn't work well on does not work well with the Biggie Jumbo correction pen, but works very nicely with the I can come in there if I want that to be red brown. I can come in there and tint it. And it's now red-brown. It takes color very nicely. That is just a big collection of texturing techniques. And you can use these to really get a lot of depth in your nests. Jumping back to the, right.
Jack,
So,
it's just a time check here. I know we've been really engrossed in the nest, but it's 1:18 right now.
Oh, I was just so distracted by being able to have both up on the screen at the same time that I lost my sense of time. You're absolutely right. So that's our bag of tricks, everybody, and it's going to really allow you to get a bunch of textures into the fibers on your nest. Think about, like, which of those techniques would you use for sculpting these, right? How would that look? And that's our bird nest bag of tricks. I hope that this was really useful to you. And if you would like, I'm going to be posting this on as a recording. I want to encourage people to play with drawing some bird nests, initially from photographs if you don't have any sitting around your house. And obviously we don't collect bird nests with birds in them. No, we don't. But after the nesting season is over and the birds have abandoned those nests, it's really fun to go out and try to find nests. Play with this, play with some of those textures. You'll find that when you just do texture in a little spot, you're able to kind of really get into it. And if you had to do that over the entire nest, you might go like, it's kind of overwhelming. So it's a little bit more manageable just to try it in a little spot. And play with that. I encourage you to share them on our Nature Journal Club Facebook page as well. It'll be fun to see everybody as we're kind of sitting at home. This is a really good time for nesting.